Shannon, welcome to B2B Content Strategist.
Thanks for having me, Amy. I'm very excited to be here and talk content.
Yeah, me too. So to kick things off, could you summarize your role in a few sentences about what the organization does as well?
Sure. So I work for Intellum, which is a learning management system for external training. So if you think about training your customers, partners, kind of extended network, we help to facilitate that type of learning, development, training, education for organizations. My role is as the director of customer and content marketing. So I do all things content, so webinars, social, blogs, downloadable content, research reports, email marketing, PR, and events. So those are kind of all in one bucket there.
Yeah, I mean, as we've done research for the season and, who we want to have on and things like that, clearly you took our attention because you create loads of great content like across a nice broad spectrum. So I'm really looking forward to talking more about that. Keen to know, so what does your team look like? What kind of roles do you have? What kind of size?
Sure. So our marketing team right now is 9 people. So we have a chief marketing officer, and then there's 3 people kind of at the director level. So we have a director of innovation and automation, whose main job is to make our team more efficient, productive, organized. Director of demand gen, who oversees demand gen, outbound SDR function. And then product marketing. We have a senior product marketing manager, marketing designer. And then my team is me. And then I have a marketing programs manager. So she also works on webinars, events, and different types of content.
Awesome. I think in a different role, that stood out that I don't hear often is the innovation role. Yeah, that's amazing.
That's we were reading a book for book club earlier this year, and one of the things that came up in that is the need to become more efficient. So in the developer, this book was about developer organizations, but they talked about making developers more productive, that it's actually something that we tend to deprioritize, but it's one of the most impactful things that we can do to move the needle is to make our developers more efficient. And it's cool that we have the opportunity to do that for marketing too, is have someone who can automate a lot of our work and streamline things. He's built like a crazy number of automations just to streamline so we're not manually updating here and there and the other place.
It's awesome. And just having somebody who can focus on that, because it's quite hard sometimes to ask people whilst they've got all their normal day-to-day tasks to be also thinking about continuous improvement and innovation. So to have someone helping lead that is awesome. In terms of the content marketing area then that you're responsible for, what aspects of content marketing are you really keen on always retaining and keeping in-house? And what aspects do you like to involve external expertise and outsource? Do you have a particular kind of guideline that you like to stick to on that?
I don't know if it's a guideline or we do all of our webinars, obviously, in-house. And I think that's really important because you want that continuous face, that presence, and someone who knows our industry. Most of our content for the blog is done in-house, but I do have a freelancer that works on SEO. So we've worked with an SEO agency to develop an SEO strategy for our website and for content. And then I have a freelancer, but that was also really hard because I've had a few different freelancers, but finding someone who really understood our industry, because in external training, there's a tendency for most people to think HR, learning and development, which is different than external training and customer education. So someone who really understood the nuance of that, because they do content marketing for an organization that has that type of training. So that's been awesome to have a freelancer support with that. I did work briefly with a social agency, tried to outsource that, but just found there was a hard time connecting with our audience. So I think about it, there's like the voice of Intellum and our customers, and then the voice of social. And we're actually way more voice of Intellum and customers than voice of social. Like we don't write for social in the sense of, I'm not trying to like socialify content. I'm trying to talk to our audience, right? And I think it was hard for them to understand like what we were doing was working in terms of what we were communicating, how we were communicating. We just needed someone to kind of take on like posting and running that for us.
Yeah.
Instead, so it's like not thinking about social media from the lens of, oh, we should use video clips and GIFs and emojis and this and that because that's what social is. But
Yeah.
actually, how are our customers communicating online? What are the types of things that they post and read? And how do we mirror that?
Mm. And do you tend to do that strategic review, so that look at that audience like usage on social media and what resonates with them? Is that something that you do on a fairly regular basis, or do you kind of take a step back every 6 months or a year or something and really kind of do that more strategic review of what's working on social?
Probably every 6 months or so, we'll pull our content engagement and look at what are the types of posts that we know perform really well in terms of the format, what we're talking about, but also, and this is where I think sometimes it's really hard to kind of codify and say this is exactly how we do it, because I'm on LinkedIn all the time and engaging with people through my own personal page and in our audience. And so I have that real time every day. I'm seeing what are they asking about? What are they talking about? What are other people posting? What's trending in our industry? I mean, and I think that's anybody who works in social media, right? You're looking at your feed, trying to understand what's going on. But if you're, engaged in, I'm in a couple Slack communities for our industry on LinkedIn, engaging with people. So that helps me to stay in touch with what is top of mind for our audience.
Do you also find that if you try and understand and observe other industries, you find that you can unlock things that maybe people within your industry aren't doing that are working across other industries?
Or you think you specifically for content, like looking at what are other people doing?
Yeah. There's a real industry focus that's so important, isn't there? But, I've heard through a few of these conversations that sometimes what's unlocked creativity is not always the immersion in what's working in our industry, but actually seeing something working in another industry and thinking, right, let's try that within our industry because that doesn't seem to be working. And I just wondered if you had any moments like that, or any groups like Slack groups that you're in that look at other industries as well as the one that you're in, basically.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think our industry is so unique where one of the things that I've learned is not to, and that's the thing I think is so interesting about working in content marketing for different companies, is what works for one industry isn't always what works for another one. So people will ask me, do we have an X account? Are we on Facebook, Instagram? And I'm like, that's not really our demographic. And that's not really where we're reaching people. So we're primarily on LinkedIn. And even in terms of downloadable content, in a previous life, I did a lot of downloadable content, ebooks, guides, things like that, and less webinars. But this audience loves webinars, so I'm really trying to feel out, like I'll experiment with new content types that I've done before, that I see other people doing. I think everything is worth an experiment, but also just understanding like what is resonating with this audience, what is it that they want, and providing that. So I'm trying not to do like content marketing by the book, but content marketing that's actually connecting with the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that, I would absolutely love to know, what is the most memorable campaign that you have run? And it doesn't even have to be from your current role in the current organization. It could be just across your career, but just something that really stands out in terms of a memorable campaign.
I mean, I think the one that came to mind when I saw this question was earlier this year, we released a research report. So we commissioned research from Forrester, and this is an update to a report that we commissioned in 2019. And the unique thing about this report is Forrester usually does total economic impact reporting on, like what is the average ROI that customers see from your product or service. And then they do more thought leadership type where they're doing something on the industry. But this report was a blend of total economic impact for the industry. So instead of total economic impact for Intellum, it's total economic impact of the field of customer education. And so commissioned this like new research, updated research from Forrester, and then got to work on content around that, webinars, blogs, the actual research report, collaborating with the analysts on that. And then with people to support and promote it. So that was the thing I think that was really fun, was to actually remember like going for a walk one night and just LinkedIn messaging a bunch of people in our industry saying, okay, we've got this new research coming out. I think you'll find it interesting. I'd love to send you a copy. Would you be willing to help us promote this? And I don't know, probably 10 of the 15 people I reached out to said yes with the
Awesome.
24 hours. That was really fun, and I think that was exciting for me because it was like a rising tide lifts all ships. This data, is helpful for everybody in our industry, every influencer. And so we wanted to be able to get that content into people's hands, and people were really happy to support and promote that.
I absolutely love that. I feel like a report just encompasses everything that is good about content marketing, because like you said, it's new, important and valuable information that other people will hopefully want to share and people benefit from it. And you touched on this already, because you said there was the report, but then there was all the other content that you did, like the webinars and the articles and things like that. So you start at the top with something that is unique, and especially in this world of cookie cutter and like the same old content coming out from AI, that there's not going to be the same old content coming from your customized, like independent thought leading report that you've done. And then all the great content after is going to be great too. And I just wanted to dig into that a little bit more, because I'm always going to be talking about repurposing because that's what we do. But you have the report and you already implied that there was other content that came from it. So what did that look like? What is the repurposing that you tend to focus on from an independent report that you commission?
Sure. So we have the independent report, and I usually turn that into slides for enablement for our sales and account management teams, so they can pull those into presentations. They can share those with customers. We turn those into infographics that people can share on social, can embed into their own blogs. I create a series of blogs. So I kind of look through for, are there trends or clusters of things that all tie to each other that I can create a blog and like pull in this research. We'll also kind of go back through, and we're keeping that in mind. So whenever we're creating content, we want to frame it in the sense of what's happening in the industry. So even if it's not a blog explicitly about the research report, we're citing the stat from the research report. We created a series of social posts, an employee advocacy plan to kind of amplify everything that we were doing with that research report. We did a webinar with an industry analyst, so that we're a member from our executive team and this industry analyst were talking through the data points. And then we did more of like that influencer engagement where we asked people if they would, what I had them do was create a video speaking to one of the data points. So I gave them a pre-read of all the data, said, find a point that is interesting to you and just share your thoughts. Like, does this make sense? Why does it make sense to you? Were you surprised by anything? So we have a whole kind of playlist of people who had shared their thoughts, and then they also kind of amplified the report during launch. So I think that's most of what we did to kind of repurpose that content.
Yeah, and it's just all the best aspects of repurposing, finding the angles and all the different avenues of value that you can go on. And the report itself, was that a gated piece of, was it lead gen? Yeah, so you were getting email addresses and building your leads through that. Awesome. Well, my next question was, what's your favorite type of content to repurpose? But have we just answered that already with the report?
Yeah, the research reports, I think, are the easiest because, we found with this research, even our competitors were using that data in their content or on their landing pages because it's great, right? Like this really is good for our industry. So I think that's the easiest one. I call it like very shareable content. Another one that we tend to repurpose is webinars, right? So if we're having a conversation with someone and we're presenting, can we recap that? And do that for a couple of reasons. One is like why, you spent all this time to prepare and promote one webinar. Why not get more, value out of that? But also because not everybody has time to watch a webinar recording 30, 45 minutes long. I know for me, I'm really not. I think it's so funny because I host webinars all the time. I'm not a webinar person. I won't show up and I won't watch the recording either, honestly. I'm much more of a reader. I've always been a reader. And so I think, to me, it's easy to repurpose a webinar into written content, but then I also know that it's helpful for people like me who just can't. Like I have a really hard time with video content. It's just not how my brain processes.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I mean, like, we enjoy working with webinars, but me personally, I just don't even have the patience for video content in, like, if it was live and I couldn't watch it in 1.5 speed or something like that, I'd just be like wanting to speed everyone up. So I'd have to wait for the recording just so that I could watch it faster. But yeah, I'm probably more likely to skim the transcript or skim the blog post and associated content, engage with the videos from it, then I might go and watch the video if I feel like I can see there's value. So I agree. Everybody consumes content differently. Do you guys have a like a format that you go through with the webinars now, where you know what you're going to repurpose it into? So you have like a kind of end-to-end plan from development, running it, repurposing thereafter? Is it like a repeatable format, or do you tend to vary it depending on each webinar?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would like to say, I think we start with the intention that we are going to repurpose in some way. And I actually think this is really helpful, because I've been to webinars that are really not structured, and where it's hard, you walk away and you spent 35, 45 minutes and you're like, I don't know what I learned. Like, I don't know. And that's where I think thinking from what are the headers and what are the bullet points perspective as a writer has been really helpful in structuring the content of like, okay, this is our agenda. We're going to talk about this, and here are the sub bullet points and this. That makes it way easier to repurpose, because now we already have the structure in the format. Sometimes we can even write the blog before the webinar is live. But I think it also just creates better content for the webinar, is because we actually have this format where people know what to expect. It's structured, it's well organized, and those main speaking points are there, where it's not like taking us on a journey all over the place. But we're actually, I think because we keep that in mind, it's easier to repurpose, but I think it also produces better webinar content.
Yeah, me too as well. Like that structure just has so many benefits as well beyond the repurposing. Completely agree. And are there any specific content creation or content management tools that you currently love at the moment, maybe that help streamline processes or workflow or anything like that?
I mean, we definitely use a lot of Google Docs, and our marketing innovation person has built us a custom Airtable. So the Airtable keeps us kind of organized in terms of what's being published, who's writing it, who's the byline going to, because the writers don't always take the byline. And then we can actually push all of that to publication, store it. So that is all, right? That's part of the automation and innovation part, is that all of that is kind of being tracked, stored, published to the website. If we need to make a change, we could just make it there and push it to the website. So that's kind of what we're using right now, is everything writing goes in Google Docs. And then from there, it'll go into Airtable to get pushed, our websites and Webflow. So it'll all get pushed there, tagged, categorized, all that.
And then what about AI? So I'm super interested, because I would love to have an innovation person in our team. I'm imagining that they are looking at AI. How about you? So from a content marketing perspective, are you leveraging AI? And if you are, how?
Okay, that's a great question. We do leverage AI. I use it more for formulaic things. So if we're doing a case study that's challenge, solutions, results, I'll pull in my notes from customer conversations and have it do the first draft, and then I'll edit it from there. Same thing with press releases. I hate writing press releases because I think they're boring. So I'll just take the notes from the conversation and be like, here's 3 of our past press releases. Here's the information for this one. Can you write it? And then I'm usually updating and making it, like doing the quotes. But for actual content, I have said before, I think I'm just a little too particular and controlling. If I have a vision, I just want to write it. I don't want AI to write it. I don't like, and maybe I just haven't learned how to train it on how I think and how I write. But I just don't love often the output. I think there's a lot of language in there that I wouldn't use, a lot of very like, oh, ChatGPT wrote this type words. I've even tried giving it a list where I'm like, you tend to say these 30 words, and I would like you to never use those. And it doesn't, it still uses them. So I don't like it to write. If I'm struggling to like figure out how to word something, sometimes I'll put it in and be like, hey, what's a different way of saying this? Yeah. So sometimes it's good to do that. And I also am not great at writing titles for blogs or even for webinars. So I'll put in there, hey, here's the abstract, here's a brief, here's the blog. Can you suggest 5 titles? And I don't always like the titles, but it's, again, like something to work off of. So I think for me, I use it as kind of like a brainstorming partner to help like offer a different perspective, right? Because I think and write the way that I think and write. AI has its own way of doing things. And sometimes you can look at something and be like, okay, I don't like that, but they gave me an idea of what I think I want to do instead. And so that's how I've been using AI. maybe someday I can train a model to be like, these are my headers, please fill it out. But I don't know. I think it's really important to create content that resonates with people, that's very valuable. And I just think it's easier to do as a human to create content for other humans.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. I mean, completely on the same page on everything you just said with the list of words not to use. So I've done that before. Do not use like delve, realm, tapestry, in the world of, evolve, all those words that we just keep getting. But then it still ignores you, doesn't it? Like, and then I'll say, I said don't use these words, and then it'll say, sorry, I used them. And also with the titles, I agree with you in terms of sometimes it just helps you like it come up with a different angle to what you were thinking, but it always does the little bit colon, unleashing, constantly unleashing the power of everything. You just constantly unleash power everywhere. And it does the same format. I'll tell you what, Shannon, which is like super disappointing. So we're currently recruiting for a new content writer to join the team. Like, bear that in mind, like content writer, not even like developer. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And we got like loads of applications in the last 48 hours. And probably 60-70% of them have used AI to complete the application form, the personal application form for a writer. So obviously we ask questions to sort of just look at their writing ability in the application form. It's a key part of the process with the writers. And not only is it really obvious because the structure in the words and it's flowery and it's just completely AI wrote that, but here's the kicker. Because they've all used the same tool, we've got duplicate word for word, the same answers across multiple application forms. So like the question might be, what's exciting you the most about content marketing at the moment? And multiple applications, word for word, have put the same answer because for their own job application, to prove that they're a good writer. The most ironic thing is we ask a question, what's your views on AI in the world of content writing? And loads of them have used AI to answer that question. We haven't changed a word. So we've got a ton of duplicate answers as to what they personally think of AI.
Oh, wow. That's wild. Sometimes I will, I tend to be a pretty plain writer. Like I write like I speak, it's conversational, and I try to use simple words because I'm not in overly flowery or even honestly like super professional language. So if I'm writing like a brief for work, sometimes I'll ask ChatGPT, okay, in very basic terms, this is what I'm doing. Could you professionalize this? Could you make this a little fancy? And so I'll have it do that, but it's still my input. But it's unfortunate, but I think, people, I don't know, maybe we just don't know. We don't feel comfortable with how like our own, like how we write, right? But I also think one of the things I've learned is that more simple conversational tone, that the way that you actually are resonates with people. Like I found that with content, even on social, you can take all these things about hooks, and I'm sure that I could be a better storyteller and I could absolutely write better hooks. But I also think there's something about creating good content, because for years I've had people, even if it doesn't follow the formula and it doesn't follow the best practices, it's so good people want to go and see it. You know what I mean? So I think if you create good content, you build a reputation for that where people want it, even if it doesn't follow the blog best practices, the webinar best practices, social best practices. I think that's the unfortunate thing, is we forget, authenticity and creating really valuable content is in and of itself enough. You don't have to have all the other I's dotted, T's crossed.
I completely agree. And I think we're just going to go more and more that route, aren't we? As we get more and more of the opposite side of what you just said, that kind of content's just going to stand out more to people like you and I who care about those things more. So it'll stand mountains high above like the other content. So yes, it's all super interesting. I'm sure the innovation person within your marketing team, are they providing much help with regards to prompt engineering or anything like that, or is that not part of what they're looking at the moment?
Right now, I think less prompt engineering, more automation of what are the things that we're doing on a regular basis? How do we become more efficient? So even with calendaring, repurposing content, can we automate a bunch of that? So especially when it comes to project management, it's just a pain to create tasks and subtasks and whatever. We have our product marketing manager has actually created a custom GPT for product marketing where our sales team can use it. So it's programmed with our brand guidelines, brand voice guidelines, our messaging and positioning, all of our product marketing documentation. And so the sales team can prompt it and say, hey, I'm writing to such and such. Can you help me out? Or what are the top problems at such and such? So I think that's been an interesting use case for AI is to create a custom one where people can ask it questions, more easily find things, get pain points or a little blurb that they can send to somebody. I think that's been really interesting and a good use case. And I think we'll probably do more with AI in the future, but I think right now we're strongly focused on automation and internal efficiency.
Yeah, which is great. That speeding things up that can be sped up to allow you to have more time to focus on creativity and quality work is what AI should be all about. So that makes sense. Looking into your crystal ball, what do you think of the future of B2B marketing and content in the next 5 to 10 years or so? Just in terms of, is there any particular innovation or direction that you think B2B content marketing is going to go the next 5 years or so?
I don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball. That'd be really fun. But I think you already said it, that authenticity. I think being able to see real people, real brands, real voices, I think that will become, and I think I'm seeing that already, with people elevating voices of people in their industry and sharing, whether it's use case playbooks or behind the scenes with so-and-so or how such and such company does X. I think we're going to see more of that type of content because that's what people are hungry for, is less listicle, generic content, more, well, tell me, how did you do that? Like, walk me through that in reality.
Okay, closing up the episode. It's been absolutely fantastic, so thank you. We are posing to you a question that the previous guest asked on the show. So I'm going to ask you, and then I'll ask you what your question is. So the question that you have comes from Martin Malloy. So he's the head of content over at wealth.com. And he's asking,
what would you consider the most overrated aspect of content marketing? Whether that's coming from you personally, like your personal opinion, or whether that's external, what you've maybe heard from colleagues in other departments. What do you think is maybe something that you hear all the time that you should be doing or shouldn't be doing?
Potentially controversial, but I think repurposing is awesome. I'm with you. I think you should do that, right? I call it getting more mileage. If you've already put in the work, like, why not get more mileage from it? But you don't have to repurpose it in every way. Like, not everything is an infographic. Not every video clip needs to be clipped. Not everything needs to turn into a blog. Like actually thinking, what can I derive from this that has value alone? Not just me checking a box, not just me creating something for the sake of creating something. So I have something for the blog, I have something for social, I have something for the newsletter. But how can I create a derivative that is truly valuable, stands on its own? So I think less checkbox. I'm a fan of less checkbox marketing in general. Like, what actually is useful?
Oh, I absolutely 100%. And I think that sometimes repurposing just get a bad reputation for just the people thinking it's just about being everywhere and breaking everything up. But I agree, there's just as much strategic intention behind the repurposed content as there is behind the first piece of content, isn't there? So absolutely love that. Music to my ears. If you were in a room full of content marketing leaders and you could ask a question and you'd love to know their views, what would your question be?
Okay, so for me, and hopefully you've heard this, is keeping the voice of the customer top of mind, where obviously you want to create content that relates to our business, our product, that ties the industry. But I think it's so important just to understand, like, what matters to you? What matters to Amy? What matters to my audience in particular? So my question would be, how do you keep voice of customer top of mind? How are you keeping tabs on the conversations and the pain points, the things that really matter to the individual people in your industry, not just kind of the trend reports that we tend to reference?
Fantastic. Love that question. So great. We'll see what the next person has to say about that. So thanks, Shannon. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you just sharing so much value and being so giving in all the answers that you provided. Well, is there any next steps that you would like anyone to take for people who have enjoyed this episode? Do you want them to connect with you on LinkedIn or anything like that? Just anything that you like people to do?
Yeah. Well, if you like this episode, go ahead, follow the B2B Content Strategist podcast.
Thank you.
Good for Amy. But you can connect with me on LinkedIn. So pretty active. Yeah. I have no LinkedIn boundaries. So I'm on there every day now. So I will respond to your message and connection requests. Just let me know.
Thank you. Thanks, Shannon. Well, that was awesome. So thank you so much. We'll draw this episode to an end, but it's been fantastic. So thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Amy. It's been great.